Welcome! I'm Vivian from the ArcGIS Maps SDK team. In this video, I'll show you how to find a route and directions with the ArcGIS Routing Service and ArcGIS Maps SDK for Swift. Routing is the process of finding the best path between two or more locations in a street network. All routes have at least two locations, known as stops, which include the origin and final destination. To create the application, I'm using the project and code solution from the Display a Map tutorial as a starting point. The solution displays a basic map and sets an initial viewpoint. The complete tutorial instructions and solution are available in the description below. To use the ArcGIS routing service, I need an access token that has privileges to use the service. In this example, I'm going to use an API key credential. I'm signed into my portal with my ArcGIS Location Platform account to create a new API key credential. I create a new credential, enable basemap and routing privileges, and copy the API key so I can use it in my project. ArcGIS Routing Service is available for both ArcGIS Location Platform and ArcGIS Online developers. For step-by-step instructions to create an API key, see the links in the description below. Back in my Xcode project, I pasted in my API key to set the ArcGIS Environment API key property, and I'm ready to start coding. Moving over to the Content View Swift file, I first changed the basemap style to ArcGIS Navigation. This style works well for routing applications. Next, I update the existing coordinates to center on Los Angeles. Next, I create a private class named Model that is an observable object. I also need a state object reference to the model class in the Content View struct. To learn more about managing GeoView states, check out the Programming Patterns page linked in the description below. Later, I'm going to use graphics to display the route results on the map, so I need to add a graphics overlay to the model class. A graphics overlay is a class that manages a collection of graphics that can be displayed in a map view or scene view. Lastly, I update the map view to display the graphics overlay. I'll need a few graphics to represent the origin, destination, and route line. I begin with the origin graphic. I make the origin graphic using marker and line symbols to create a white circle and a black outline. Then, I make the destination graphic using a marker symbol to create a black circle. Next, I make the route graphic using a line symbol to create a solid blue line. Lastly, I need to add these graphics to the graphics overlay in an initializer function. After setting up the graphics, I am now ready to write the routing function. Routing is implemented with a route task, so my first step is to create a route task to reference the ArcGIS routing service hosted by Esri. Next, I make an array of direction maneuver objects that will contain the step-by-step directions. Now I can create an asynchronous throwing function that will be called when the user places both origin and destination points on the map. The function takes those points, labeled as start and end, as parameters. To customize the results, I create route parameters with the returns directions property set to true and set two stops, which are the start and end points. Now I'm ready to call the solve route function on the route task by passing in the route parameters. The first step of the routing result is the best match. After obtaining the first result, I can access its properties like geometry and direction maneuvers. I use those values to assign a geometry to the route graphic and obtain the step-by-step directions. The user will determine the start and end points by tapping on the map, so I need to configure the view to handle touch events from the map view. In the Content View struct, I create 2 point variables with the state property wrapper to contain the start and end locations of the route. Next, I add the onSingleTap gesture method onto the map view. This sets a closure to perform when a single tap occurs on the map view and allows access to the screen and map points. In this case, I only need the map point. If it is the user's first tap, I set the start point to the current map point and set the geometry accordingly. Otherwise, I set the endpoint to the current map point and assign the appropriate geometry. Next, I add a task modifier to the map view with the endpoint as an identifier. This closure is called if the value of endpoint changes. I ensure that the start and endpoints are not nil and use those values to call the solve route method I created earlier. This will solve the route between the given points. Now, to display the turn-by-turn directions, some UI is required. First, I create a bool variable to indicate if the directions are shown or not. Then, I create a toolbar at the bottom of the map view. I add a button to the toolbar that will toggle the is showing directions value. I add a popover with a navigation view to the toolbar. I set the is presented parameters to the is showing directions value and configure the navigation view. Within the navigation view closure, I populate a list with the values in the directions object. I also configure the navigation view with a title, display mode, and done button, which will toggle the is showing directions value. Now I'm ready to run the app and find a route. Here's my app with the Show Directions button at the bottom of the map. I tap on the map to set the origin and destination points, and the resulting route will display on the map. I can tap the bottom button to view turn-by-turn directions. Thanks for joining me. The full tutorial is linked in the description below. To learn more about building mapping apps with Swift and ArcGIS, please visit the ArcGIS Maps SDK for Swift documentation. Thanks for watching.